Okay, so in terms of appealing to your audience, one thing that I would say that first off, I think the topic of sport is always relevant. It's increasingly relevant, and I think it's not just sports benefits. It's not just sport, but it's the benefits of exercise. And I think through this, we actually saw lots of ways that sport was accessible to your average standard person, which is relevant to your age group. I think you showed sports which are actually not gender specific. So you had a gym instructor, you had basketball, which is a sport that's increasingly played by women. You had swimming, so I think that the choices that you made in terms of your audience actually showed a lot of awareness about how you were trying to target a broad mainstream audience. I think we saw a range of ethnicities represented in there as well, and so in that respect, I think in terms of hitting your audience, I think you made quite a strong job of it.
I think so, and I think the fact that we had a female presenter there, when girls get to a certain age, they tend to be turned off of sport.
It's quite disarming by having that.
Yeah, and by having her, and she's just going and chatting to all these different types of people, I thought that worked really well. I think in terms of a unique selling point of place in the market, I think what Sir and I both liked about it was that you were focused not on competing or the skill you needed for a particular sport or how a sport works. You were looking at how does sport benefit you, not just physically but also mentally. And I think you stayed on with that pretty much. You weren't going on about weight loss or health particularly. It was all about mental health, which I think is a USP. It's something that maybe isn't. It's just sometimes said, it makes you more motivated or it makes you less stressed. But I think you really explored that well, and you stayed on focus. All your interviews talked about it makes people feel good about themselves. It gets out frustration. And I think that was really clear that that's where you were going with it, and that makes it a USP. Because
it's definitely a topic it'd be quite easy to get lost in.
Yes.
So it could have, you could have gone off on that Andy suffers from being obese for a minute, or this or that, but all the way through there was that really strong thread, which is what the documentary was hung off, and you need that to have a good film like this.
Yeah. It
hung off that one thread of mental benefits all the way through, and yet didn't feel too tacked together. So it felt like everything kind of followed on and worked quite effectively because it was all hung on that one key idea that you stuck to.
Yeah, and I think what was good is the people that you interviewed didn't then just repeat the same points. You interview because it's different sports. Maybe you talk to them, ask them not to say similar things, but people were picking up on the different aspects, which meant that we weren't thinking, oh yeah, all right, we know it does this. We were learning something new all the way through.
Yeah.
Very appropriate, really.
And by and large, in terms of USP, kind of mixing the USP with the audience, the people that you chose for each of the sports were in and around your target audience age group.
Yeah.
So maybe a couple of the people were slightly above it, but not in a way that people would be like, that person's not like me at all.
Yeah.
It was all people that we could identify with as 16 to 24-year-olds.
Basically, wasn't me.
Yeah.
That's okay. Conventions, we said, it does what it says on the tin. Lots of conventions there. Loads of interviews, loads of experts who were proper experts who you'd had to seek out and find. You went to a lot of different places, which was really nice to see. And a whole range of people. We had the people in Oxford Street doing the trick things. We had actual trained personal trainers, PE people, athletes, a whole range, which was really kept the pace of the documentary and kept it interesting. And you interviewed them all in different ways. It wasn't all just Pooja with the microphone. We did have a range of different types of interviews. Plus, with your Vox Pops, I thought the graphics worked really nicely to segue certain points. And the light-hearted presentation of Pooja, playing the games and all that sort of thing, worked really well. You didn't feel like, oh God, it's going to be people banging on about sport. It made it look fun and, as Sir said earlier on, accessible for anybody to have a go at, really.
Yeah, and the interviews, at no point were they overdone, so I didn't feel like with any of the interviews I was like, I've been looking at this person's face for too long. It was snappy. I think it ran at about 5 minutes, and I think in that space of time you probably spoke to about 20 people in that space of time, but yet yet not to the extent where, you know, I couldn't tell you who each of the interviewees were. The other thing in terms of the interviewees, that they actually seemed very carefully selected. They weren't sports professionals. They were people concerned with helping people get fit, who would actually really know about how sport would benefit people. I mean, even the basketball player that you interviewed, he's somebody that's been with his team for a long time and has obviously seen his development, and what he spoke about was to a large extent how that's helped him take
in other
lessons
areas
from
of
it.
his life. Yeah, exactly.
So they were all really well chosen people.
In terms of use of technology, I think you've made use of the technology available. I don't think it's necessarily always the best filmed. You know, there's quite a few bits where the camera's moving halfway through an interview, or there's some awkward framing where, you know, Pooja looks like a midget, and so it's not. You've used the equipment well, but it's not always got a really high quality of finish to it. But then you did go to a lot of places and interview a lot of people in live situations, so... Yeah,
I mean, I think, if moving on to kind of talk about the sound, I'd say at times maybe the audio was... the levels were a little bit off in terms of the music talking balance. The music could have maybe been a little bit lower, so we could hear what the people were saying. I think at times the music was... I think the music could have been maybe better selected, but I wouldn't say that would be a reason... I think that it could have been better selected to appeal to your audience. That wouldn't be a reason to really criticise you, but I think there could have maybe been a little bit more awareness of what would appeal to your audience in there, because at times it felt a bit kind of like library music, when we could have had music which went a little bit better with what your audience would be listening to in 2011. I think also in terms of technical ability, the graphics weren't cluttered, they were quite effective, they made the points effectively.
Reinforced the sports that she was discussing as well with the imagery.
Yep.
I think, so therefore, in terms of improvements, things that we'd really talk about that would improve it would be your framing of the shots and more consideration of, you know, do we really need to see the microphone? Is it conventional to have it in shot? And your use of music, not your use of music, but your choice sometimes of the music, because it was good to have it because it was there to create pace, so we understood that. But maybe it felt a bit like, you know, it was the sort of music that we might have used in our media projects when we were 18, which obviously for many of us, that's some time ago now.
Miss Seven much longer than me, I hasten to add. What was the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, I think that would be one general improvement that we can make in that the presentation, and I'd say maybe in terms of the graphics as well, could have shown more of an awareness of what's going on in the media now, sort of, you know, maybe a little bit sort of, especially with the topic being something that's about being young and being active, that could have maybe been a little bit more reflected in the presentation. So, you know, and this is just a style thing, but it could have been, I mean, the graphics were effective, but they could have had a bit more slickness to them. That kind of thing that really sets the tone for the documentary. That said, as Miss Seven said, it did what it said on the tin. You know, it did sell to you the mental benefits of sport,
Definitely.
Which is unique. It's something different.
Yeah, and that was what your treatment set out to do, so well done.
Yeah.